Do the Eagles have a problem with Jalen Hurts? Should they move on after this season if he struggles, or is he the franchise quarterback to stay? We talk about it on this episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Corey Neidl, David Neese. And it's a beautiful Tuesday, depending on where you live. The weather's nice. Maybe the weather's not nice. Maybe it's gray. Maybe it's blue. But nonetheless, it's probably better than what's going on in the NovaCare complex, especially after A.J. Brown probably set fire to it with his little autograph as he left. But nonetheless, how are you gentlemen feeling today?
Doing well. Weather's good. Not as hot as it was yesterday. We're supposed to get some rain in the area the next 2 days. I think there's a big sense of relief over in South Philly right now. Obviously, the report that came out where A.J. Brown signed his Pro Bowl fat head, whatever type of photo image they've got plastered on the wall there. And he obviously wrote, the best ever that played here. Obviously, that's going to ruffle some feathers. But, you look at a 4-year stretch, he was the best wide receiver that the Eagles had in that time. But certainly knows how to tick off a fan base, that's for sure.
We know how Corey feels. How you feeling, David?
I feel great, man. I kind of think it's funny. I mean, he's just kind of trolling. It's kind of part of his personality. I think he uses social media as he kind of weaponizes it, uses it to his advantage. So to me, it's just kind of fun and games. I mean, it's old. I'm sick of it, but I see his point of view with it. But yeah, it was his last parting shot. So haha.
Well, nonetheless, he did mention people are running away with it with the incorrect way, which we spoke about earlier today, of him leaking things to the media. But it's not what he's leaking per se at this very moment. The issue at hand is with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown officially moving on, the spotlight is officially on Jalen Hurts, and the questions are becoming, do the Eagles stay with him? Is this his prove-it season? Is this last season? Should they draft a quarterback next year? Should they trade Jalen Hurts away? Nonetheless, this is a guy who has never missed the playoffs, has 2 Super Bowl appearances, and has been, in my opinion, one of the better quarterbacks in franchise history. But today we have the most uncommon sense podcast, because we have to actually dive into this and explain why Jalen Hurts is actually for Philly and why these rumors are coming about. Now, it's no question that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown had friction. We saw it on the sidelines. We saw it in the locker room. We saw it linger for the past, I think it was 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. And A.J. Brown has kind of, in my opinion, checked out a bit since the Super Bowl winning season. But Jalen Hurts has not been, what we can say, under the best of spotlights when he plays, because if A.J. Brown drops a ball, it's Jalen Hurts' fault. If A.J. Brown's wide open and Jalen didn't get it to him, it's Jalen Hurts' fault. How do you guys feel about the spotlight that's currently on number 1 of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think it's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about a Super Bowl MVP, and yet this guy just constantly gets criticized from the media, from certain people in the fan base. I think I've come to an agreement with myself that you either really like Jalen Hurts or you really don't like Jalen Hurts. And in between where my face for radio is, there's nobody really there. Like, I just don't really see or hear a lot of people that are in the middle where they can praise Jalen Hurts but also can criticize him. It's just one way or the other, in my opinion. And listen, Jalen Hurts has flaws. Every player has flaws. What I like about Jalen is that he seemingly is looking to get better. And people will say, well, Corey, he doesn't want to throw over the middle. He doesn't want to run as much. Okay, those are valid arguments. But at the end of the day, the guy just wants to win. Yeah, he may not run as much, but when he needs that 3rd and 4 and he's got to get it with his legs, guess what? He tucks it and runs. He's been able to find throws. I mean, to me, the biggest tell for me with Jalen Hurts is the way he's played in those 2 Super Bowl games. And listen, I know you can say, well, it's only 2 games. It's not the regular season. The regular season, you need an entire 53-man roster to get you through that season to get to the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs, it sometimes comes down to your biggest playmakers, and Jalen Hurts has thrived in those moments, not once but twice. and arguably should have won that first Super Bowl if it wasn't for that holding call on Bradbury, and the fumble really hurt. I will say that, but they overcame it. That game was always going to come down who was going to have the ball last. And unfortunately, the Eagles were unable to burn enough clock to keep Mahomes off the field. So I just think it's quite ridiculous, in my opinion, that we're having these discussions where a franchise quarterback who's led the team to 2 Super Bowls, as you mentioned, has never missed the playoffs since becoming a starter, is now all of a sudden on the ropes of being the starting quarterback for the Eagles after this year.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Up until 2 months ago, most of the media was pretty much behind A.J. Brown for the last 4 seasons. And most of those years, it has always been Jalen Hurts taking all of the criticism. And some of that was because Brown is emotional, reactive, and more importantly, public, which, a lot of the media liked that during his time here. Now it's turned against him. So, that's over with. So now that he's left, the focus has, gone right back to Jalen Hurts again. And the reason I think you see so many hit pieces and things like that about him is because he isn't anything like AJ. He's the complete opposite. He's not reactive. He's inward. He's stoic. He's calculating. Any post that he does, anything that he says publicly, you should look into it further because it's for intent. It's for a reason. And he doesn't react to all of the noise. And I don't think that it's because he doesn't hear it. I just don't think it bothers him. And I think he is so focused. He just puts his head down. He just goes to work. And he's overcome everything that a lot of other quarterbacks have failed to do, including McNabb and some of these other franchise guys over the years, like Wentz, etc. They weren't able to block all of that out. You finally have the guy who can. And it drives them crazy because they're not used to being able to say these things, do these things, and not have anybody react back. He just goes to work every single day with his head down. And I think it's something new that, everybody's had to get used to. And I think even fans who were on the fence with him at first have come around to just accepting his personality. And it's a guy who just wants to win more than anything else. And I don't know how anybody could dislike that.
I think we've gone to the point where the real question, as my phones are going off, the real question is isn't whether the Eagles should move on from Jalen Hurts. It's whether people are holding him to a standard that they don't apply to the rest of the quarterbacks in the league. Jalen Hurts, if you compare apples to apples, I think there was a stat that came out when the rumor came out that A.J. Brown was not happy with Jalen Hurts not throwing to tight windows. I think Jalen Hurts is 6th in tight window percentage. When they said he can't throw deep passes, Jalen Hurts leads the league in deep pass percentage. And he may not be the sexiest quarterback out there, right? Obviously not talking look-wise, but he may not be flashy. He may not be doing things like Mahomes throwing it behind his head or anything of sort of, like Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is quick as hell. Patrick Mahomes is a hell of a quarterback, has a hell of an arm. Josh Allen has a hell of an arm. He may not be doing all those things, but he's doing what he's doing at an efficient rate. And he's had to do so. And I know a lot of people are going to hold me accountable for this. And I've been beating this dead horse for 2 years now. He's had to battle these kind of criticisms behind an offense that just isn't productive. I think we all can agree Nick Sirianni's blueprint is not that great of a blueprint for any quarterback to succeed in. And he's had to do so with that weighing against him, with the antics of the sidelines weighing against him, with the Philly media weighing against him, with A.J. Brown's nonsense on the sidelines and in the locker room weighing against him. And he, like you said, he's been stoic. He's been holding his head high, walking through the media scrum, walking through his teammates, and still holding himself accountable when he does mess up. I don't think there's ever been a moment where Jalen Hurts says, hey, it's the wide receiver's fault. No, he says, hey, we just got to do a better job, keep the main thing. And it drives people insane because they want the drama. They want, like Corey and I have discussed over the past several months, my soap opera was what the stuff that was going on with the Patriots and that reporter. And I was like into it, I needed the toxicity. And Jalen doesn't bring that at all. The kid's not toxic. And Devontae Smith follows that same suit. Smitty will be honest, but Smitty's not the type to throw everybody and their mother under the bus. AJ was that guy, and he fit perfectly into the mold of what the media wanted somebody to be in this locker room. I don't have a case against him. I do have a case for him, and I think the Eagles need to kind of just nut up and shut up. That's the best way to put it. You have a quarterback that's taken you to the Super Bowl twice. He can most likely take you again 2 more times at the next 5 years or even 4 years and actually win one of those. I think it's time to get behind a guy that's actually in his prime, that's being productive, and that has a bit of a chip on his shoulder now. His best friend just left him to go to another team. He's been saying that other team feels like heaven. On top of that, it's the whole world against Jalen Hurts. Are you telling me this kid's not going to come out and have probably the best passing season of his career?
Well, he usually thrives in that situation. I want to go back to a point that you made about A.J. Brown, talking to the media. I might be in the minority at the moment because of how mad everybody is, but I really didn't have a problem with A.J. telling the media what the problem was with the team when he said passing. We all knew it. Fans all knew it. You go to a bar, you go to a game, you're sitting in your living room, you're yelling at the TV that the passing game is atrocious. So I had no problem with A.J. Brown saying that.
But
I'm almost positive I was.
With him saying that, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when he says that?
Well, obviously it's Jalen Hurts, but if you just look at it from a bigger scope, you know that that offense was beyond disjointed, and it started from the top with Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and worked its way down. I know everybody likes to put the blame on the quarterback in the NFL, but there's other people responsible for the passing game. Jalen Hurts isn't setting blocks. He's not running around. He's just reading the defense and trying to get the ball to where it needs to go. So I really didn't have a big problem with AJ speaking out in that regard. You made another good point where you said Jalen's not the sexy quarterback. I think that's 99% of it. Everybody loves Josh Allen. Everybody loves Joe Burrow. Everybody loves Lamar Jackson because they can sling it. What have they done? Josh Allen can't win a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow can't win a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson's trying to get over the hump. Those are the 3 other big guys that are always stacked and compared with Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls and has won and a Super Bowl MVP. So my question to Eagles fans that are watching when I'm talking to them, would you rather Jalen Hurts throw for 4,000 yards with 35 touchdowns and 20 interceptions, but the Eagles are 9-8, 10-7, whatever you want it. And they don't make a deep run in the playoffs. What do you want from this guy after what he's shown you? I mean, they won the Super Bowl because of Saquon Barkley. No, they got to the Super Bowl because of Saquon Barkley. They got to the Super Bowl because of Jalen Carter. They got to the Super Bowl because Jalen Hurts did what he needed to do to make that offense hum. And then, by the way, outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the biggest game by a long mile. So I just don't really know what the answer is and how people will be pleased by Jalen Hurts. I think this is just going to be a misconception around QB1 for as long as he's in the city. And for better or for worse, we got to talk about it. It's going to be talked about all throughout training camp as the offense is starting to learn a new scheme under Sean Mannion. That's going to take some time. David and I talked about it last week. David mentioned, he's expecting at least 4 to 6 weeks for this offense to really look like it's supposed to. We're going to have these conversations in week 2 and week 3 if Jalen doesn't light it up and throws for 180 with a touchdown and no interceptions, and they win 24-17.
Yeah. You mentioned AJ, and I think a lot of people criticize the whole, message that he was giving to the media. And I think that's where the criticism comes, is not because of the message, but because of the way he did it. I think that's kind of the difference. I mean, all 3 of us have been in the locker room. He was one of the more friendlier, cordial, forthcoming people in that locker room with information. And I don't mean in a negative context. I mean, he would just tell you the truth. But I think the cryptic messages and things like that are kind of what put a target on him. And because Landon Dickerson tells you what he thinks. Lane Johnson most certainly tells you what he thinks. and they don't get any criticism from it. But I guess when it's your best friend and it happens to be a wide receiver, it just looks different. But as far as the pressure goes, the excuses that you'll hear why people, kind of downplay him at times is because he has this super team. Well, there's a whole bunch of quarterbacks who have super teams. And I'm quite curious to see if Matt Stafford faces that same criticism this year. And does he have the same pressure on him now that he has the super team? I mean, Aaron Donald's likely coming back out as well. I mean, the Super Bowl is in LA. They got Myles Garrett. They're going to have Donald back. They have Puka and Adams. I mean, they literally have a super team. And, I don't ever hear any of that same stuff about Matt Stafford. And quite frankly, until Matt Stafford went to the Rams and got the super team, what was his record in Detroit? He had a losing record for a decade. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until he got all the pieces around him that he became good. So, I don't think it should be judged. The goal in football is to have good players around you. But a whole bunch of teams have good players, but somebody has to orchestrate all of that. And Jalen Hurts has been able to do that all 5 years.
And I think that's the nail on the head, right? The consistency. Like I mentioned before, he's been to the playoffs. I mean, every year except for the year that he took over for I think they were eliminated before the end of the season. He's done everything that they've asked of him, and he's dealt with the trade rumors of Deshaun Watson, of Russell Wilson, of the threat of of them drafting a quarterback to replace him. He's dealt with all this nonsense, and he's still found a way to succeed. He's dealt with the nonsense of, like I said, Sirianni's, the locker, the now he's done with the nonsense of Hassan Reddick and AJ Brown stuff. You don't see quarterbacks like this go through this kind of stuff and not get flustered. We have yet to see him get flustered. He shows up to the media. He talks what he talks about. He makes a joke. He walks away. Jalen is all business. And I don't see, as a fan, I don't see the problem with that. I have a buddy. Yes, I'm a Mets fan, so I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, Corey. I have a buddy of mine that gives me a hard time about Juan Soto being with the Mets because, he's like, I mean, the whole thing was what? Juan Soto wasn't vibing with the Mets. He wasn't having fun, all this stuff. But my thing was like, he's all business. It's all business with these top tier guys. It's all business. They don't have to look like they're having fun in front of us, but behind the scenes, you don't know what they're doing. At the end of the day, they come to the games, they show up and they show out and they do what they have to do. Jalen Hurts is in a unique position now where it's going to be held against him more than ever because he doesn't have A.J. Brown. He has Devontae Smith. He has Dontavian Wicks. He has Mekhi Lemon. I think now the question becomes, with everything going on, how do you guys feel about the rumors that's coming through where if he does not do well this season, the 2028 first-round pick will be used for his replacement?
I mean, that's 2 years now, right? So, I mean, you're giving him 2 years this season in 2027. If you
could trade that pick for, to move up.
They could move up. I mean, I have no idea what the draft class is looking like next year. I do know it's more talented than what we saw this year. David probably has a better beat on it than I do at this moment. But, yeah, I mean, listen, the case could be made if Jalen falters pretty badly this year, then, yeah, that conversation could become more real. It could become more uncomfortable. But, I mean, it's like we're putting too many things out there before things are happening. Like, let's pump the brakes. We're not even at training camp yet. Let's just see how this offense looks. Everybody thinks Devontae Smith's going to have a huge year akin to JSN this past season in Seattle. Nick Sirianni was raving about Mekhi Lemon and what he's going to bring. He compared Dontavian Wicks' game to Keenan Allen. So, I mean, this is a wide receiving room that is going to look very different. They're not going to rely on the alpha wide receiver that A.J. Brown was, and it could benefit this team because now, my argument with some friends are, well, Devontae Smith's going to get all that coverage now because A.J.'s gone. But if this offense can be effective and run efficiently, and Jalen Hurts is just dotting it to 7 to 8 different targets a game, well, no, Devontae Smith's not going to get double that much because the defenses have to rely on stopping the other options that Hurts has at his disposal. So I think you're going to really have to see what this year brings. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that this season is pivotal for Jalen Hurts, but I don't think it's fair to say that this is a make or break year for him, because technically you still have 2027. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, they could flip that for a first round pick in 2027, but how often are teams willing to move a first round pick, especially if this upcoming draft class is as talented as people are saying? I mean, I think that's also something that they're going to have to consider.
Yeah, I mean, the case for doing it, and I don't think it's a rumor that, fans don't have to look 2 years down the road. Media doesn't have to do that, but Howie Roseman and the front office do. And to have two weapons that you can move up and get the top quarterback in a 2028 draft absolutely would be something that they would do if, the situation, played out that way. Contracts create natural decision windows. And Hurts's deal is structured so that the Eagles can realistically pivot out of that after that 2027-28 season. And elite teams have a quarterback pipeline as an insurance policy. I mean, Howie's made no bones about it. That's what they called the quarterback factory. The Eagles have shown they're comfortable drafting quarterbacks even when they already have a starter. They did it to Donovan McNabb with Kevin Cobb. They've done it to Wentz. They, will likely do it to Hurts. It's not random. It's just roster philosophy. It's how Howie Roseman looks at it. And by 2028, Hurts will be expensive and aging into his 30s. And extensions for all these other players that'll be on the roster, compress cap flexibility. So the team may look for a cheap starter on a rookie deal again. A first round quarterback resets the financial clock, and that's the biggest edge that you have in modern NFL team building. And, in my opinion, I think that's how they had the super team in 2017 that won the Super Bowl. That's how they were able to buy Chris Long and all of those other guys on the team that year, Malcolm Jenkins extension and LeGarrette Blount and on and on. They had so many of those types of guys. And in 2022, it was more of the same. That's how they were able to afford everything, because they were on a rookie contract. So, yeah, even if Hurts is still good, that's how teams like the Packers ended up with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. Not because QB1 is bad, but because the window starts, closing and opening for somebody else. And it just gives them protection. That doesn't mean they need to draft a quarterback in 2028, but they have protected themselves so that they can and get anybody they want with 2 first-round picks if Hurts shows any decline whatsoever. So that would be, the only thing I could say, for, moving on from him. But again, that's a whole bunch of ifs that we're talking about, and because if Hurts is still elite, you keep him, because the hardest thing to get in the National Football League is an elite quarterback.
He's 27 years old. 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 Super Bowl win, a Super Bowl MVP. In the last, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 seasons, he has 65 touchdowns, with I think 22 of them being rushing touchdowns. I know the question is always, is he elite? But how are you grading elite? Corey mentioned it perfectly. Would Eagles fans be happy if he threw it for 4,000 yards and they went 9-8? I mean, for that, you just be a Bengals fan.
If you're top 5, you're elite. Top 5 is elite. I think he is in the top 5.
So where would you place him in the top 5? I'm actually pretty curious about that.
Probably 5th. I mean, 4th or 5th, I think. I mean, I think Mahomes is number 1. I don't think that's really, debatable. And then you look at Josh Allen and you look at Lamar Jackson. And I think Hurts is in that next tier right there. I think he has earned, being mentioned in the top 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks. And the case against is, if you have a top 7, 8 quarterback, you don't touch the position. You keep riding with it. And, I know people are concerned with his speed, once he hits 30, 31, because Philadelphia has seen what happens. McNabb fell off a cliff after that,
Well, he got a little chunky too. I mean, all those Campbell's commercials weren't helping.
Yeah. And I think it's an unfair comp, to look back on any quarterback like that, because Jalen Hurts is wired differently. I don't think you're going to see that type of fall off, because he will just elevate other parts of his game to compensate for whatever's fallen off somewhere else. So, yeah, I mean, whenever we're going to get into it, the case against drafting a quarterback, I think there are going to be far more reasons than what I just mentioned as far as trying to do it.
I think it's also kind of subjective. I mean, you could spend weeks on arguing who's the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, who's in your top 10. I think it just depends on what you deem more important. To me, winning is more important for a quarterback. Now, again, people are saying, "Oh, well, he doesn't win games. It's Saquon Barkley. It was AJ Brown. It was Devontae Smith." It doesn't matter. You need playmakers. I mean, the argument makes no sense to me. So to me, Jalen Hurts has won. That puts him in the top 10, in my opinion. Statistically, no, he is not a top 10 quarterback based on numbers. If you're looking at pure numbers, I agree. Pat Mahomes probably still is number 1. I think he's actually possibly on the decline. They had a rough year last year, but I just think that Jalen Hurts, regardless of where we want to rank him, if he wins, why does anything else matter to this fan base? Why the media is going to have their story. They need things to talk about. The national media, I don't even watch ESPN anymore during the day. It's just terrible. But you're going to need storylines. Jalen Hurts is a polarizing player. He is going to make headlines, good, bad, or indifferent. But as an Eagles fan base, and for those who are fans and can't stand him, does Joe Burrow win with this team? Maybe. Does Josh Allen win this team? Maybe. But Jalen Hurts is your quarterback, and he has won, and he has done everything he has to get the organization a Super Bowl, and he's going to try and do everything he can here with his back up against the wall to do it again, I think.
Yeah, I agree with all that. It is subjective, and I guess the argument is most people do think Joe Burrow would succeed here. Josh Allen would succeed here. I think that is what the common thought process is. But I agree, he is a winner, and you don't have to think about that. He's shown it. It. He's already proved it. He's won playoff games. He's a top tier dual threat quarterback. The whole system is based around him. It has been ever since he came here. So, I mean, by any measure you want to go by, I still think he's a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback in the NFL. And I believe most people in the NFL who actually get paid to do this for a living, as far as evaluating talent for franchises, believe that as well. I don't think he's anywhere near as polarizing internally in the NFL as he is externally, as far as media goes and social media.
Agreed.
Mute.
My bad. I do agree. I'm actually curious because you did mention in a comment making a case against them drafting a quarterback. What would be your case against them drafting a quarterback within, obviously, next year or the year after?
The case against doing it?
Yeah.
You already know Hurts' ceiling and his floor. There's years of data there. There's playoff runs. There's Super Bowl level championships in play. That reduces the urgency to try to hedge your bets early, in my opinion. I mean, you've already seen what he can do, unless he suffers some kind of injury. Hurts is still the answer. The smarter move is to extend them, not replace them. First round quarterback picks a lot of times can actually destabilize a winning locker room. I think we've seen that happen, in some of the other franchises. It creates media noise. When is the first round pick going to get his shot? You're always looking over your shoulder. It creates internal pressure. It can fracture, offenses and teams. Rodgers and Love, I think, was an example of that. Just years of noise. If Hurts is still playing at a high level, the distraction risk is more than a football decision. The opportunity is right there for a very large window with Hurts, and you win with core veteran windows. And I think that's what they have. And 30 is not old in today's NFL. And if you take a first round quarterback, you're not taking a starter at corner or edge or offensive tackle or wide receiver. You're delaying, roster construction at other vital positions. And, a team would have to be facing a lot of uncertainty at quarterback to go do that, in my opinion. And the most realistic outcome is that they're not going to be Jalen Hurts. That he came in year one and was clearly outplaying Wentz immediately towards the end of the year. You know, and by 2028, the Eagles likely fall in three different paths. Path A is Hurts is elite, and there's absolutely no reason to draft a quarterback early. Path B is a little more confusing, which is like he's good but declining. And then you draft some sort of tier quarterback. And path C is the offense is stagnated. They haven't made the playoffs. They're not winning divisions. And then that's your most aggressive path. But the bottom line is until he shows otherwise, Hurts is elite. And it's just conversation and noise. I mean, they've protected themselves with the 2 first-round picks. Do I believe that played a part in why they did it? I have no idea. I think Howie's longevity and job insurance that he knows he's not going anywhere plays the largest part of why he'll take a 2028 pick, because he has security that most general managers in the NFL never have.
Want to give a shout out to Tim real quick before I chime in. He talks about what games does he miss. He's been durable. He has only cares about winning. That's my argument. The stats are second to me when we're talking about ranking where he is in the top 10 in the league. Against drafting, like David said, you know what you're getting from him right now. Now, if there's a sharp decline this year for whatever reason, if he's just not throwing the ball well, if he's not running well, I know there's some concern that maybe he's slowing down in the rushing game, which I think could be a negative for him in certain capacities, but I don't think he has to be a true dual threat quarterback like he was when he first came into the league. But if he's able to improve his passing, I think he'll be more than fine. But I think that the Eagles just know what you're getting in Jalen Hurts. You're not getting a drama-filled quarterback. You're not getting somebody that's getting in trouble off the field. He does fantastic philanthropy work in the city. Mm-hmm. He's very grounded. I mean, this is a guy that you build your franchise around. It's a quarterback, the star of the show, a face of the franchise, and he's done nothing to jeopardize the Eagles in a negative way. So I think as long as the production is still there, they roll with him. Now, the dollar sign might look different. The amount of dollars, that's going to be up for grabs. And, maybe that will get a little dicey where Jalen's going to say, hey, I deserve X, Y, and Z. And the Eagles push back and say, well, because you only did X, Y, and Z, this is what we're going to offer you. That could get tricky and a little messy. But again, that's another big if.
Dollars and values always get tricky, don't they? Again, I feel like if we're gonna focus on stats, it's you're looking for the Joe Burrows of the league. At this point, you're looking for the Lamar Jacksons as well, right? Lamar puts up great numbers. He's flashy. He's out there, but he hasn't won anything. Josh Allen had the only opportunity this season to win. He hasn't won anything. Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, I feel like have dominated, and now Sam Darnold is part of that crowd, right? Have dominated over the last several years when it comes to Super Bowl and when it comes to winning itself. And to be honest, Jalen, you can get to your point next, Corey. Jalen's done it with a head coach that is very questionable in the eyes of everybody. Pat Mahomes has Andy Reid. We have somebody that came out of the blue, took a job, and started well and has been everywhere. But nonetheless, Jalen makes it work. And for all the drama that's in there, the fact that he's not throwing jabs at anybody and he's not throwing anybody under the bus, I feel like we have it pretty damn good.
Yeah, I agree. And Tim and I are on the same wavelength. I said this earlier. What does Burrow, Allen, or Jackson have won? And Tim also makes a great point. A bad year offensively, and he still put up over 3,200 yards and a 25-6 touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, that is good production. And we may have said this on the pod before, but I think fans and people who cover maybe not so much the media, but more so fans and those from the outside, we are so ingrained in fantasy football, in daily gambling, where we are rooting for touchdowns and big time games offensively, where we're almost programmed when a quarterback like Jalen Hurts doesn't light it up and throws for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but doesn't turn the ball over and makes big plays to move the sticks when it matters late in the fourth quarter. That isn't going to pop up anywhere in a box score unless you're looking at the play-by-play section. That's why he gets the heat, I think, as well. And the complaint of, oh, well, look at Jalen. He's barely throwing for 200 yards. And, what kind of quarterback is he? Well, they've been winning a whole lot of damn games with that formula. And to your point with the uncertainty with Nick Sirianni, this dude's had 7 different offensive coordinators in his career as an NFL quarterback. I'm losing track. I mean, no other quarterback has had that much change year in and year out.
And dating back to college as well.
Right. And he's continuing to win. He's continuing to find ways to evolve. And that's what you want from the quarterback position. He said it during his press conference the other week that he's excited to learn this new scheme under Sean Mannion. He's trying to be a sponge. He says he always tries to be hip to hip with whoever the OC is. And he did make a subtle jab, maybe not towards the Eagles directly, but indirectly. The way I kind of took it was he mentioned how many different voices he's had over his career, but he says that's never stopping him from becoming the best that he can be at the quarterback position. So he's ready for the challenge. And I just think that he could be in store for a big year without A.J. Brown, ironically.
If only Lincoln Riley had just agreed to become the head coach back then, none of this would be happening right now. But nonetheless, here we are. Jalen Hurts being the center of conversation due to the big trade with A.J. Brown. I think we're all in agreement where it doesn't make sense to move on from Jalen at this point in his career. 27 years old, and I still feel like he has his best football ahead of him. I would say before we get into updates from some housekeeping stuff, do we have any final thoughts on Jalen Hurts in general heading into this season, and what to expect from him and the Eagles as they look to combat this new offense?
I think it's just going to be a big question mark. I think a lot of people want to say they know what we're going to see and what we're going to expect with this new scheme. We have to remember Sean Mannion is a first-time play caller. Things could get a little ugly at times. Things could get a little frustrating. I mean, it takes skill, in my opinion. It's an art, in my opinion. I've never done it, but from just following football, you can see why there's offensive coordinators that are lasting so long in this league is because they have been able to find the combination of the skill set, the mental fortitude, and finding the art of live play calling opposed to just working with positional groups and doing that. So I don't know what to expect fully from Jalen Hurts, but I do expect him to put his best foot forward, and he's going to do everything he can to make this offense look new and fresh, which will be refreshing for fans, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a piece on Hurts right now that kind of talks about a lot of what we're talking about here. And just to end the story about it, I think so many people get it wrong about Jalen Hurts because their beliefs are rooted in archaic quarterbacking philosophies. Hurts is more than a pocket passer. He's far more than a run-first quarterback. And he does a lot more than just survive on athleticism. He wins all the time. He wins outside of structure. He doesn't rely or care about gaudy stats, which is what most casual viewers or media, base his game off of. He is he improvises constantly, and he is obsessed with winning. And success is often overlooked when you're just looking at the back of a football card and just looking at stats. And, I think it's just been oversimplified how everybody's looked at him, because every offense, like y'all mentioned, through the seven offensive coordinators that he's played through, well, they haven't had to simplify the systems because of Jalen Hurts. They've actually built them around it and weaponized it because of him. And I think, at the end of the day, like, Corey's mentioned and you've mentioned, winning is what matters. And he's been able to figure out how to win at Alabama, at Oklahoma, through 7 different coordinators in Philadelphia. No matter what the case is in front of him, he figures out a way to solve it.
That's factual. Sorry, I'm stumped by Tim's comment. It's a gray area, but OJ Spivey and I had that conversation back when they went to the Super Bowl the first time, and it was a very interesting conversation. But nonetheless, Eagles are where they are right now, and I think they are in better hands than they were yesterday. I think they're in a better position than they were yesterday, and I think this team can actually show what they're really made out of now, with the best player to ever played there being somewhere else now. But nonetheless, Corey, what you got for us for OTAs?
Yeah, we got some updates today. The mandatory mini camp started today. They'll have one more tomorrow, and then we've got over a month of absolute nothingness. So I'm sure more Jalen Hurts conversation will be had. I had the updates ready to rock and roll, and now my laptop has decided to freeze. But with that said, we have a quarterback controversy, gentlemen. Andy Dalton taking QB2 reps again over Tanner McKee. What is going on?
They might want to be trading Tanner McKee.
They're not getting a third-round pick, though.
No, they're not getting a third-round pick. I don't ever think that was that realistic to begin with. Though I never would say never. Howie Roseman gets a lot of things done that most people don't think he can. But yeah, Andy Dalton, a lot of people looked at it because of his age and kind of rolled their eyes when he was brought in, but there's nothing on a football field he hasn't seen. And he could be a very productive backup. And if you have to win a game, maybe that's why they're doing it in this manner. There's a new regime right now. The Eagles before, went with the rookie, went with Tanner McKee as rookie season, went with Tanner McKee, over the years to try to get that 1 or 2 game win, or they just didn't care if they won it or not. And maybe this new regime is looking for who in this room gives me the best opportunity to win a football game. And clearly that would be, Andy Dalton over, Peyton and McKee. So I think it's a little surprising because of the structure that it's been in previous years with Tanner McKee, just kind of being, the unadulterated QB2. But as far as putting the best product on the field that gives you the best chance to win a football game, it probably is Andy Dalton.
Yeah, it's been one of the bigger storylines. Tim asks, does UR Bernard get any reps this season? Honest answers only. I'm going to say no.
I think he's a ways to go, but I'm actually curious to know, to hear how far off do you think he is? I mean, I think we waited, probably 3 years before Mailata actually hit the field. Do you guys expect the same kind of thing?
No, I do think he'll get reps this year because I don't think that they can let him go without another team picking him up at this point. So
I thought he was in that program for a year. I thought that protected him.
It doesn't until after the cuts from the 53-man roster. And so I think they will protect him. And offensive tackle is a complex position. Edge rushers, you got to know, you got to go vertical and horizontal. There's a lot to it. But defensive tackle isn't the same as playing, offensive tackle. So I think that his learning curve, because he's not very horizontal, but he's very north and south. I think they probably could use him in certain circumstances this season. I mean, do I think he's going to have hundreds of snaps? No, I don't. But do I think he finds his way on the field? I actually do. I mean, they have a history of doing that. I mean, even Ajomo came over here as a teenager and started, playing for Texas, and he learned how to be a defensive tackle quick. I mean, it didn't take him very long. So I don't think that the learning curve for that particular position is quite as hard as it was for, offensive tackle that Mailata faced. And who was the other guy from Australia or New Zealand they had on that IPP for like 2 years? He was an offensive tackle, Lakin, something like that.
Yes.
And, the development just took so long that they, walked away from it. But yeah, I do think defensive tackle is a position that it is attainable for him to get some snaps by the end of the season.
That would be very interesting to see.
Tim mentions could be a steal like Jordan Mailata, where Jordan reportedly called Bernard a freak of nature, but did also mention you can see that rawness and kind of mechanical like movement from Bernard. But again, there's certainly time to kind of wean that out. Some other updates. Mekhi Lemon, the first-round rookie wide receiver, did not practice. He's been sidelined with a hamstring injury, so they're going to take his time with that as well. I think one of the biggest storylines, and from all accounts for the media that has access to these practices, guys, Tariq Woolen sounds like he is a dog right now during the OTAs. And even today, he apparently made a really nice play. I talked about it on my other show, but I want to ask you guys, do you think the Eagles have the best trio at cornerback in the NFL and Woolen, DeJean, and Quinion?
I think they have an advantage with this trio in the NFL because nobody's expecting Woolen to be disciplined in Philadelphia. Nobody's expecting him to actually kind of have a little bit of a break. I know when he first came out, he dominated and he went quiet after that. And then obviously he has the on-field antics sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. But I think with Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean back there, I think Woolen's gonna be he's gonna be really freaking good. And I'm still so stoked that they signed him. I know I was I was blowing up David's phone when they signed him. So this was my pick for the offseason. I'm happy that he's actually up striving.
Yeah, I think they will have the best defensive backfield. The only question on the entire defensive side of the ball is the second safety. And I'm sure that will be addressed. I mean, Reek Woolen is another guy who he didn't transition to cornerback until I think it was his sophomore year in college. It was in 2019. He was a wide receiver. And 2.5 years later, he's being drafted, by the Seattle Seahawks as a cornerback. And then 3 more years later, you're starting to see, how elite he can be. His fluidity and movement to have the size that he does, like 6'1", 6'2", whatever he is unnatural. Like you just don't see that very frequently. I think that he was a little hurt. I heard it today in the press conference. Someone asked him, his feeling when he didn't get that multi-year deal. And he admitted it did bother him. He kind of laughed at first, but then got honest and said, yeah, it was surprising to me. So he's in a situation now where he can learn more about the position. Again, a guy who's only been playing it like 5+ years, and he's learning from one of the masters of defense in the entire NFL. And he has a lot of incentive to have his best year of his career because he is looking for that multi-year deal. I mean, he mentioned it himself today, and it's something he's striving for. He addressed the penalties. He said that he'd only had one other Taunton penalty his entire life until last year. And he said he really hasn't done anything different. They just called it different. And I kind of believe that. I think they have gotten a lot more strict on that kind of call. So I'm not that concerned about, some people, downgraded them because of that. I don't really have any concerns for that. But I think that, yeah, their defensive backfield, you're going to have to pick your poison on many plays. And you couple that with the pressure that they can bring up front with Jalix and the interior of, Jordan and Jalen Carter and Grenard on the other side, and whatever they get out of Nolan Smith. I mean, it's going to be really tough for opposing offenses this year. So I'm super excited to see, how he plays out here. And I would be shocked if he didn't end up charting one of his best seasons ever.
Do you think he could end up being, I mean, we haven't seen this since Alshon Jeffrey, but the guy that they extend either midseason or towards the end of the season?
It come down to money. I mean, yes. Do I think they like him enough? Yes. They scouted him heavily back in the draft in 2022. So they were fans back then. So I do believe he fits the mold of the kind of player they want to get. But yeah, that'll be a financial decision, I'm sure.
Just got a couple more here. Want to thank everybody for watching. Tim being really interactive in the chat. Make sure you guys follow us on X, but also more importantly, head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button to the podcast, Flipping the Birds. We're looking to push to 100 subscribers as we kind of revamp the page on YouTube. Love everybody tuning in on X. There's a link below as well that you could quickly get over and just hit that subscribe button. It will take you 5 seconds to do so. And me and the guys will certainly enjoy that as well and appreciate it. Speaking of safety, Michael Carter II rotated with Marcus Epps. We kind of expected that to happen with Carter II. One of the bigger storylines today, Chance Campbell got some look at first team linebacker, and he had a pretty good day from all accounts. He's not one of the bigger names on the roster, but obviously Jahad Campbell working back from shoulder surgery. They might need to have somebody kind of fill in alongside Zach Bond early on in the preseason and maybe even in the first week or two. Fingers crossed that Campbell will be ready to go by then.
Just move Jalen Hurts to linebacker and trade for Max Crosby.
There we go.
I'd like to see more Trotter Jr., to be honest. I actually think
I forget that he's on the team.
I thought he looked pretty good late last year.
He did. I mean, he's a really good run stopper. He could play that role very well. So I'd be kind of excited to see him get a little bit more reps this summer.
Last but not least, David and I were talking about this before we took air, but I think this was a pretty positive sign. Jalen Carter was there. I know it's mandatory, but obviously there's talks about him getting extended. They already extended Jordan Davis, but the fact that Carter was there, he didn't work out in team drills, but from other reports I saw on X, he was doing some individual work. I have to believe that that's a positive sign in terms of where the conversation and discussions going between the front office and Carter on getting a potential extension done. I don't know how you guys view that.
I think he's showing a level of maturity that's been questioned of him since he was drafted. Him showing up, him showing out as well, and I think he's a bit leaner, if I'm not mistaken. It's showing like I'm all business. I want to be part of this team. I want to be, a core member of this team. It's key to his future. And again, he had the incident last year when he started the season by spitting on Dak Prescott. Although we all applauded, it was the wrong place and the wrong time to do it. But I think showing a level of maturity is huge on his end.
Yeah, I think the Eagles challenged him to be more mature and to come in more physical. And also, if he wants to earn that C on his chest, and he does, they're challenging him to be the best version of himself. And I think that's the best way to get the most out from him. And he wants to be a team captain. He wants to be one of the faces of the franchise, and I think he's well on his way to doing that.
You see Tim Sullivan saying Carter's going to have his best season this year. I think I agree with that.
I do as well.
I think I agree with the fact that you mentioned earlier that everybody needs to go over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, which Tim, if you notice, was on X and went over to his YouTube channel and actually just subscribed. So shout out to Tim. Be sure to subscribe with us, and we will be live every Tuesday with a random video here and there. But nonetheless, we'll be covering you guys all season long, all off season long. I mean, I think we're probably the best crew out there, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I could do better with my lighting at this point. I'll figure it out, I promise you. But nonetheless, we'll be live next Tuesday.
David some props. It looks like he got a better camera.
I did.
Not only that, but
there we go.
David's sneaky with his technology stuff. His setup is very sneaky setup. Like, I should have that kind of setup, and I'm not privy to it. But Dave, don't sleep on David. David's low key like the CEO of Best Buy.
Yeah. So it only took me 2 seasons, but yeah. And if I can make one more point about the mandatory camp, what I was looking for was Lane Johnson. We had mentioned it a couple shows back that he wasn't there. He came back, and more importantly, he gave a lot of affirmation to the new OL coach, Chris Cooper. He said the system is going to be, quote, more efficient for us, that's a quote, right? And he said our run blocking angles will be more conducive. We'll be able to be in a 3-point stance a little bit more. But that first one is just, this new system is going to be more efficient for us. That was very telling. So I think, we all kind of were shocked, I guess, at the, ousting, so to speak, of Jeff Stoutland. But I believe that, all of the guys are really behind Chris Cooper, and they're really looking forward to a new offensive line, style of play. So I'm really excited to see what we're going to have this season, because it's going to be different than anything we've had since Nick Sirianni's been here.
And to piggyback off that real quick, Saquon Barkley did mention last week that running in under center allows him to see the line a lot better, where his shoulders are more squared off. And he says that it just gives him better vision as well. So I think what Lane has said, what Mailata has said, and what Barkley has said, it seems like it's vibing. It seems like Sean Mannion, who used the word blend a lot in his first press conference, it seems like it's starting to blend together early on.
Yeah.
See, this is exactly why AJ Brown's from the other side of the fence looking at us like, wow, I wish I was a part of that team again. I'm still a little bit bitter, man. He was my favorite Eagle for some time. So nonetheless, the grass isn't always greener unless you're in Philly and unless you're wearing midnight green. Like I mentioned, we'll be live every Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, Give us all the noise that you want, all the feedback you want. I'm Brian Cameron alongside David Neese, Corey Naito, and we're flipping the birds. Flip.